Welcome to the definitive UFO. Welcome to the definitive UFO news show, where we dig into the biggest UFO headlines for the fight for disclosure and the push for transparency. This isn't just a news show; it's a real discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unanswered questions in the search for the truth. No political spin, no biased narratives, just the facts. And yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. It's time to dig in. We're going to go ahead and get ready to get into this show here. Preparing for an alien invasion. What are these beings here for? Let's have the conversation, right? Love and light or alien invasion or some sort of malevolent thing. I don't know. We'll talk about that and a lot more. Let me see who has come up in here. Hopefully everybody's hearing me well. Let me jump in the comments and just see. All right, we got Kitty Catty Whack in the building. Hey, Kitty Catty Whack, thanks for coming on in. We got Mel WD40 lubing us up. He's always lubing people up for the show, getting them right on into the show. Appreciate you coming in, saying, hey, Rob. We have Frankie B. Frankie B is in the building. Also, Kitty Catty Whack is saying, great question, Rob, for tonight's topic. Yeah, I mean, why not have the conversation, right? We should have it. We've talked about it before on this channel. Avi Lowe brings it up, which I think is a good thing, right? And we'll talk about that and a lot more. Let me see who else has come up in here. Super Crazy Movie Geek in the building talking about wake me up when disclosure happens. Well, you might be asleep for a little while if it's up to the government. Yeah, we got Miss Catherine Jones in the building saying, hey, Mr. Rob G and fans, appreciate you coming on in. Miss Catherine Jones. Let's see, who else do we have showing up here? We got Thirsty in the building here tonight. All right, Mel WD40 saying, you sound good, Rob. Thank you. Finally, audio is working like it should. I appreciate you letting me know. And we're going to go ahead and get into some real good stuff here. So, just like I said, let's go ahead and jump into the slides for tonight. First of all, we have a phone number on this channel. We do. The phone number for this channel is 856-843-3444. Or that's 856 the DIGG. If you're outside the United States, dial 001 first, then 856-843-3444. Or that's 001-856 the DIGG. Either way, we'd appreciate you reaching out. It's a phone number. Everyone has a phone. Put that number in your contact list. Put the social dig. That way, if you have an experience, if you have a sighting, just go ahead, send me a message. You can leave a voice message, text message. You can call 24 hours a day. Sometimes it's cool to just call and say hi, right? We're friends. So remember that. Also, memberships are available. Become a social soldier today. We do have memberships on this channel. Basically, it helps us keep the show going, the shows, plural, that we have on this channel, and make sure that we're continuing to raise the bar by being able to get new assets, new programs, new subscription services to make your experience, your viewing experience, even better, right? We'll always be raising the bar as we are here. And I want to say what's up to our members. They're at the bottom of the screen. Actually, let me make sure that we show our members here. Let me shout out our members as well. Memberships: Maggie M10, Leanne Bridges, D. Nunley, The Beekeeper, Polly Rodderman, Miss Catherine Jones, Deb from SAC, Wes Decker, W. Decker, N. Joanne, Emperor Penguin, Frankie B., Amy, Laura Dominguez, Moody Mungle, Mel WD40, Presidential Zaddy for sure, Lulu Bell, Richard Minnick, Archon Jackpot, Mac Hector, Eternity Eternal, Thirsty, Deb D, Twiggy, Poncho Zort, and of course, T-Bone. Thank you so much for helping us put the show on. I think I'm gonna change this and make these are all of our executive producers for the show here tonight. So all the names that you see at the bottom of the screen, make sure you show them some love. They definitely help make sure that we can put this show on, and any and all help is appreciated, especially when it's a one man show, right? So getting into the show here tonight, what are we talking about? First, let's talk about Three Eye Atlas, right? We've been talking about it. It's going to be in the news for a while until it passes and we figure out what it is. But for at least the next couple months, till it gets close enough to Mars, which I believe is in October, Mars, the rover camera is going to hopefully get a good picture of it. And maybe we can put it to bed at that point on what exactly it is. Now, I will say, this object has now started forming a tail, right? That was one of the big problems, saying, hey, this thing is coming in and it should have a tail, but it's glowing on the front. And it seems like maybe there's some sort of inner glow, is what, as far as Avi Loeb is saying. And hey, why not just leave your mind open to it? Because you never know. And it's just always better to be prepared. So shout out to Avi Loeb for at least opening people's eyes, right? Because if Avi Loeb doesn't step out and say anything about this object coming in, we just look at it as a comet, which it most likely is. But then we don't get a moment to say, hey, what if it wasn't that, right? So Oumuamua passed us up. You know, we looked at it. He said it was strange. We thought maybe alien technology, but we didn't know because we couldn't view it. We didn't have any real images of it. We couldn't study it, but this one we will be able to. And I don't know, part of me hopes it's just a comet, part of me hopes it is alien tech. But what does that mean if it is alien tech? We'll go ahead and get into that. Let me read this little piece here real quick. You would assume that most intelligent beings out there in the universe have experienced conflict at some point in their history. This would mean that when traveling through interstellar space, any intelligent being would understand the importance of having the ability to defend themselves. So this would also mean these beings must have weapons to defend, right? It only makes sense. Even if they're so far ascended, as a lot of people say, that they're just totally above war and the things that we do here on Earth, you would have to assume that at some point in their history, they had to deal with something like that. I think, when we talk about yin and yang, evil versus good, light versus dark, hot, cold. I think those things are common across the universe. I think those particular things are common across the universe. So you would assume at some point in the history of these intelligent beings, if they're not currently warring, which I would think they would be, but people will say that's a human way of thinking. And I'm more so on the, you don't know who you're coming across. So if you don't know who you're coming across, how do you know what their intention is, right? That's what we're dealing with right now with this current situation, with these things that are currently visiting us. And we don't know what their intention is. We know they're here, but we don't know what the intention is, right? So I would assume out there in space, in interstellar space, if that's how they travel, that there's the risk of running into other intelligent civilizations that may or may not have the best interests, right? So you would think that there would be some sort of weapons on board to defend on these craft. Now, in order to defend, you need an aggressor. This goes on to say that with all the potential intelligent life out there, there must be aggressive species. There has to be. Right? The next logical question is, which one of those species are visiting us? With this basic knowledge, shouldn't we at the very least prepare for the unknown? I say yes. I think Avi Loeb agrees. And so should a lot of other people when you really think about it. Anything incoming to this planet, whether it's simply an asteroid, simply a comet, is still looked at as potentially a threat, right? Because if it's going to impact the planet, then we have a situation, right? So anything coming from outside, whether it ends up being intelligent life or a craft under intelligent control or an asteroid, on a path to hit the planet Earth where we live, it's all a threat. And it's all something that we should really sit back and think about. And that's what we'll do. Let me go ahead and talk about Three Eye Atlas, though, because, a lot of people out there, as far as skeptics go, will say, oh, look at these UFO guys. We get something coming in the solar system. What do? They automatically say it's extraterrestrial. They automatically say it must be aliens, right? That's what they're saying. And I think, no, I think for the most part, I think we could all take in the fact that it's likely something explainable. It'll likely end up being a comet. And as day by day, as days go by, more images that they take of it, it is more and more and more taking on the appearance of a comet. However, that doesn't take our, the Avi Loeb scale we talked about. He has it a 4 out of 10. He said he'll take it to a 0 if it ends up, we get more information and it ends up just being a comet. He'll take it to a 0, and that's how it should be. Let's figure out what it is. Currently, it's a 4 because we don't know. And the closer that it gets, maybe it'll be a 0, or maybe it'll be a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll have to wait and see. However, I would not want to sit on my hands, allow whatever this is to come in close enough to the planet to figure out what it is at that point, right? Let's at least think about it. It's a good exercise. Your mind is a muscle, and it needs to be exercised, right? Or else you suffer atrophy. And for a lot of people out there, means if you don't use it, you lose it, essentially, right? So, with that being said, I have something up here for Three Eye Atlas I want to talk to. This is just some of the latest information on Three Eye Atlas and the fact that there still are weird things about this, things that just don't line up with what we normally see in a comet, right? That originates in our solar system or that is orbiting within our solar system. There's expected behaviors, but when you have something coming in from interstellar space, there's obviously, this is the third thing we found. There's probably been many more. And it's just like maybe they behave differently. Maybe the makeup is different than what we're normally used to seeing. And maybe that ends up being the case because what they're saying is there's nickel that is being detected there, but in a weird amount. So I'm going to dive into an article that I came up on for the latest on Three Eye Atlas. And this is from Urban Hrinko. This is actually from the Three Eye Atlas Reddit. Says the universe is challenging us once again. Interstellar object 3 Eye Atlas, traveling through the galaxy, is currently passing through our solar system and continues to surprise scientists. The new data only deepens the mystery of its origin, fueling scientific debate about whether we are dealing with a natural phenomena or a creation of another civilization. Pure nickel in 3 Eye Atlas. And one thing I'd like to point to real quick before I read this is one of the characteristics that researchers are coming to a conclusion on as far as UFO crash sites is the fact that for whatever reason they're coming up with almost pure aluminum. So in this case, this object is displaying pure nickel. Does that relate in any way? I don't know. I'm just bringing that up because when you're talking about an element or a metal in its purest form is rare, right? It's rare to see that. It's rare to find that. And maybe that is, something to hang your hat on, to still leave the window open that this may be something we don't understand, right? So, the latest research using the very powerful Large Telescope has discovered another strange anomaly. In the gas trails surrounding 3I Atlas, scientists found pure nickel without the usual iron impurities found in nature. This phenomenon is extremely unusual for comets, as these two elements are usually formed together during supernova explosions and travel through space together. However, pure nickel is a familiar phenomenon in terrestrial metallurgy, where it is obtained through refining. Although there is a rare natural explanation involving nickel carbonyls, the artificial technological process seems much more plausible. This raises a key question. Is this object a product of space manufacturing? The discovery of nickel is not the only thing that surprises scientists. Previously, the Sphere X and the Webb Space Observatories showed that the object's gas trail consisted of 95% CO2 and only 5% water. For a normal comet, this is a paradoxical ratio. Furthermore, Hubble's observations did not reveal a classic comet tail that would extend under the pressure of sunlight. This means that either the core of the object is incredibly massive, a million times larger than the previous interstellar visitor 2I Borisov, or the surface of the interstellar traveler has unusual properties that prevent the formation of a tail. Its trajectory, perfectly aligned with the plane of the planet's orbits, also raises suspicions that someone deliberately launched it into the inner part of our solar system. October 3rd, 2025 will be a decisive moment. 3I Atlas will pass 29 million kilometers from the HiRISE camera aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. This will enable us to obtain images with sufficient resolution to finally determine the size and shape of its nucleus with certainty, separating it from a possible dust coma. Nobel Prize winner David Gross suggested going even further and pointing radio telescopes at the object. The goal is to try to record any technological radio signals that may be coming from it. That's a good idea. I haven't heard that in conversation lately, but that would be a good idea. Point something at it, see if it's emitting any sort of radio frequencies. Yeah, makes sense. After a century of our own radio transmissions into space, we may finally have an answer. Some eagerly await confirmation of the object's artificial origin, seeing it as an opportunity for humanity to unite for a common cause. And that ain't that the truth. Others hope that it's just strange but perfectly natural comet, and that its properties are simply characteristic of an object from another star system. And that would be awesome, right? To see a comet, if it is a comet, to see a comet come in our solar system that might be holding minerals or properties that just you don't find here in our current solar system. And that's another thing. And that's why I lean into the whole, have we reverse engineered alien craft? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so, because it's very likely the materials that they use come from another star system. It might not be found here in this current solar system. So if we don't have the materials that these things are made of, how would we ever reverse engineer? We wouldn't have the ability to, unless we had access to materials from outside the solar system. So I say that to say, however, everyone agrees 3I Atlas is already forcing us to take a fresh look at space and our place in it. The discovery of such an object, regardless of its nature, gives us a sense of cosmic humility. It reminds us that we may not be the only intelligent beings in the universe, and that our technologies, including artificial intelligence, may be the first steps on a long path of development. So, shout out to the author of that Reddit post, which is Ivan Rinko. Um, you know, pretty insightful. I mean, there are a lot of things. Here's the thing that's just mind blowing, right? We have monitored other comets that have come through in past Earth. We've had Halley's Comet, we had Hale-Bopp, we had a few different comets come through here that we were able to kind of take a look at, see what it was made of, and this doesn't line up with any of those things. Now, is it because simply it's coming from outside the solar system that makes it so different than what we're normally used to seeing? It could be exactly the case. Or it could be that this thing is what Avi Loeb is potentially saying is something intelligent. So you got to think about it, because as we talked about on the other show, you just got to leave that door open for the possibility of something that is coming from space inwards is going to be potentially intelligent life. And one of the main reasons, because if you're just looking at this, and a lot of the astrophysicists, astronomers are looking at this like we should only be thinking on what we've seen out there in space. But these are the same people that don't acknowledge the extraterrestrial presence visiting the planet now. So if you put the extraterrestrial presence in that bucket as well, then it makes more sense to think outside the box when it comes to anything coming in. Because right now we have these anomalous craft that are coming in, dropping in from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, likely higher than that because they're coming in from space, and they're coming and going. So if we know that's happening, then you have to be open to anything else that we detect weird coming in our direction, that it might be related to what's visiting us now, or at the end of the day might just be a comet. But either way, like I said, it'll be a beautiful thing, because if it's a comet, then we will see something, it's possible that we'll see something very different about the how this thing is constructed, right? And it could just be that we're discovering this new sort of comet that comes through all the time, but we've never been able to track one, or be able to really give any information on it. So that actually is pretty awesome. So either way, we're going to end up with an awesome experience when it comes to this, what we're dealing with here. So this was one of the latest images. They keep updating this every other day as it gets closer with different cameras. I think Avi Loeb said, I watched the interview with him and Dr. Brian Keating, and I believe he said that it'll be passing Jupiter pretty soon here. Or Jupiter, I think, is in March of next year. So either way, they're going to be able to potentially have the Juno camera go out there, get a good close image. You got the Mars rover with the cameras on it. It's going to pass through the Mars sky, so they're going to get some sort of image of it. I don't know how detailed it'll be, but very interesting, very interesting. So we have to open up the conversation to, even if this is just a comet, what if we had something incoming, something outside of 3i Atlas that we definitely have identified as technological, and it is also on a trajectory to come through our solar system on the ecliptical plane? What should we do, or what would we do? There's a lot of people out there that don't think that there is a threat narrative attached to the extraterrestrial presence. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. When we talk about a lot of the atrocities, now just going back to Roswell, right, 1947, how many things have happened on this planet, atrocious things happen on this planet with the extraterrestrial presence just standing by watching? Nagasaki, Hiroshima, uh, the Holocaust, a billion more things. And I'm not going to want to go down that list because it's troubling as it is that this is the world that we live in. However, there have been many occasions where you would figure if these things are here for peace and they want peace, they should have stepped in this time, that time. They should have definitely prevented this from happening. We're in a moment right now. They should be stepping in, and they haven't, as far as we know, unless if the New Jersey drone situation was them stepping in. And I could be open to that because there is a part of that was anomalous. And I still strongly feel like that might have been a moment that they were trying to kind of do something, right? Because I don't think we'll ever have they land on the White House and get out and say hi. I don't think they'll do that because we're too dangerous of a species to even trust that, right? So I don't think that would happen, but we have to be open to it because it's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if you believe these things are coming here, or if you don't believe these things are coming here, we all agree that there's something out there. There's likely other life on all those different planets out there, billions of different star systems, that there has to be life. So at some point in time, couldn't you expect that life to be incoming? We are a fairly new technological species, right? Most of our advancements have come within the last 120 years. We've been sending out radio waves for the last 100 years out in space. We know that. Who knows who has that at this point? Who's received that? Also, we talked about Voyager 1, Voyager 2. They've been going out into space for 50 years straight, 38,000 miles per hour. They've left the solar system. They're in interstellar space. And so if we have done that and we've sent that out that way, what is to say that something way more intelligent hasn't sent something in? And that's the problem I have with skeptics. They think it's so impossible, but with our menial abilities as human beings, we have something out there that something intelligent may come across and may have already come across at some point. And here's another point. And since we talked last, I didn't know this point, but Three Eye Atlas, they said, is coming from, when they trace it back, is coming from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, right? Why is that important? Because they said that's where the wow signal also came from back in the day. Is that related? Is that, when we talk about coincidences, is that a mere coincidence? It could be. It could be. But you still have to just be ready because you just don't know. Here's one of the latest images they put out at Three Eye Atlas. And this is showing it now more with the tail. So I'm feeling like, okay, this is probably a comet. Yeah, I'm on board at this moment with what we have currently. I'm team comet. It's a comet. But nothing's 100%, and you'd be foolish to put all your eggs in that basket just because this isn't a clear image of anything. It is, it is displaying some of the characteristics of what we normally see in comets, but that doesn't mean anything. There could be another explanation for why it has a tail. I'm not a scientist, or I don't know, the full details on why it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you still have to be open. So, with that being said, you got to ask yourself, for the people out there that think it's love and light, and I talked to Dave Scott over on Spaced Out Radio. We've talked about this, where he's doesn't feel there's a threat narrative. I do feel there's a threat narrative, and I've shown and talked about different situations where it would appear that these things may be a threat. So, and there's two buckets to this. There is inadvertent threat, which means they may not be aware that they are a threat, and they're doing things like poisoning us with radiation and things, and they're just totally oblivious. So they're not intentionally inflicting that on us, but we're susceptible to it because we're humans, right? So that's an inadvertent threat, and there are some things that fall under that. But then there are also cases of these things being a direct threat, right? We're going to look at a couple of those things, but I did want to talk about the weaponized episode that came on the other day. They were kind of talking about inadvertent threats, mainly Rendlesham Forest, right? And let me actually bring some of this stuff up here. I get ahead of myself here. Alien invasion threat. Are these beings here for peace or malevolence? Jim Penniston and John Burroughs, right? Rendlesham, we know the whole story. Over in England, the Air Force Base, these soldiers went into the forest over a period of different nights, and one of these particular nights encountered a craft that had been landed on the ground, touched it, rubbed on it, did all these things, and had these medical effects that persisted for, I think, still to this day, really. But we're talking about 30 years, 40 years ago, right? That's inadvertent. But still a threat, though, right? Because if these things were here for love and light, and they were totally unaware that we would be adversely affected by just being in the presence of their craft, then public knowledge of the phenomena would be a way for you to kind of stay away. Like, hey, if you see something on the ground like that, just stay away from it. There's a threat there, inadvertent threat, but there's still a threat there, right? And at least have that information out there for the public. So in case you're in the forest one night and you happen to come across this weird thing, you don't go close to it, right? And that's kind of the bare minimum where, as far as the responsibility of those who do know, to inform the rest of the world, everyone else, about what they found out. Like, yeah, don't get too close to these things. Stay away. That would be good to know. I'm sure Jim Penniston and John Burroughs, I'm sure they would have wanted to know that ahead of time. And I'm sure the knowledge was there because this is in the 80s. Roswell happens in 47. We're talking about 40 years of different scenarios and situations where I'm sure by the 80s, the government was aware that you probably shouldn't be anywhere near these things, right? So, inadvertent effect. Also, we talked about this, the Cass Landrum, which I actually have some information on that as well. Let me bring that up here. So I'm just, let me read this real quick. The Cass Landrum incident was an unidentified flying object sighting in the United States in 1980, which witnesses claim was responsible for causing health and property damage. Uncharacteristically for such UFO reports, this resulted in civil court proceedings, though the case ended in a dismissal. On the evening of December 29, 1980, Betty Cash 51 at the time, Vicky Landrum, 57 at the time, and Vicky's grandson, Colby Landrum, 7 at the time, were driving home to Dayton, Texas in Cash's Oldsmobile Cutlass after dining out. They later said that about 9 p.m., while driving on an isolated two-lane road in dense woods, they saw a light above some trees, and that they first thought it was an airplane approaching Houston Intercontinental Airport and gave it little notice. A few minutes later, on the winding roads, they saw what they believed to be the same light as before, but thought it was now much closer and brighter. They said that it came from a huge diamond-shaped object which hovered at the treetop level, and that its base was expelling flame and emitting significant heat. Landrum told Cash to stop the car, fearing they would be burned if they got closer. A born-again Christian, she interpreted the object as a sign of the second coming of Jesus Christ, telling Colby, "That's Jesus. He will not hurt us." Cash said she was anxious and considered turning the car around, but abandoned this idea because the road was too narrow. Cash and Landrum said they got out of the car to examine the object. Colby was terrified, and so Landrum said she quickly returned to the car to comfort him. Cash remained outside, mesmerized by the bizarre sight. He went on, the object, intensely bright and a dull metallic silver, was shaped like a huge upright diamond, about the size of the Dayton Water Tower, with its top and bottom cut off so that they were flat rather than pointed. Small blue lights ringed the center, and periodically over the next few minutes, flames shot out of the bottom. And the witnesses claimed that after the UFO and helicopters left, Cash took the Landrums home, then retiring for the evening. That night, they reportedly all experienced similar symptoms, though Cash to a greater degree. The claim was that they suffered from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, generalized weakness, a burning sensation in their eyes, and feeling as though they were suffering from sunburn. Over the next few days, Cash said her symptoms worsened, with many large painful blisters forming on her skin. When taken to a hospital emergency room on January 3rd, 1981, Clark writes, Cash, quote, could not walk and had lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. She was released after 12 days, though her condition was not much better, and she later returned to the hospital for another 15 days. She claimed doctors switched from treating her for burns to treating her for radiation sickness after realizing she had been exposed to radiation. Later, she was treated for cancer. So, a lot of people think that this was government crap. I don't think that it was. They're just, doesn't make sense. And you got to ask yourself, a couple reasons why people say that is because fire was coming out of this thing. As I said before, I don't think I don't think you could view fire as a reason why it's a man-made object, because fire exists in the sun. Fire exists in every sun across the universe, and likely on fire is used on most planets with intelligent life, right? So just because this thing is emitting fire doesn't mean anything. I believe that this was extraterrestrial craft, especially in 1980. If you were going to create something government made, why would it be shaped like that, top heavy, and with our means of propulsion, which would be rocket fuel and combustible, materials? I don't think this would be a great design for that, right? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that say this wasn't man-made. Another thing people point to is that, whenever the ones that they say are military or man-made craft, they always point to the reason being is because they're also seen with military aircraft, helicopters, or jets that have been scrambled, right? I don't know if that's escorting. It could be more along the lines of if you saw something anomalous in the sky as a government and you understand that there is a potential threat there, you are going to scramble. But because they are both seen at the same time doesn't mean that military craft are affiliated with said craft. And I think that's a misconception that people have in the community. Oh, it was being followed by a bunch of helicopters, so it's escorting it to wherever. No, I don't think so. They're scrambling to a location, I would think, for the protection of the people, but I could be wrong on that. But just thinking about what makes sense. And I think there's a lot of things that we kind of just push aside because we have this preconceived notion that because it has fire, it's man-made. Don't worry about it. It's man-made. It's probably Lockheed Martin, some sort of black project. Nah, I doubt that that's the case. So this is inadvertent. And there's other cases. If you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Richard Dreyfuss's character, they were out on that road and the orb is what we'll call is a glowing ball of plasma, right? Kind of shot across the road and he ended up with sunburn on his face and like burned his face, right? This is one of the things a lot of people report. So Cash Landrum are the ones that made it to the top as far as notoriety goes, and Jim Penniston, John Burroughs, their case as well. But there are a lot of smaller cases where some of the same things happen. A lot of the sites where UFOs land, usually there are some sort of radioactive readings, radioactive isotopes that they find on the scene. So just laying it all out there because let's see what makes sense, right? So that's inadvertent. You can't blame the extraterrestrials for that. Maybe they didn't know, right? Maybe they're totally unaware. Just like I said, if you get behind the engine of a fighter jet, when they turn it on, it's probably going to burn your face off. It's inadvertent, but it's still a threat. But let's talk about the actual threats, because I think this is where it gets interesting. There was, and actually, let me make sure that we go into the right thing here. Tom DeLonge, this is one thing I point to all the time. Tom DeLonge, as much as people don't like him for whatever reason, I still don't get that. But he was on the Steve O podcast. Steve O from, God, I forgot what those guys are called. Jackass, right? So he's on that podcast and he's on there talking about having this briefing about a situation where UFOs were shooting high energy beams at properties in Italy on land and catching them on fire. And the authorities were wondering, what was going on, how this is possible. And so he said that he was with the military, and I'm going to play the video for you, but just paraphrasing, that there was a UFO as they went out to investigate over the water because they saw UFOs out there. As they get out over the water, a USO pops up out of the water, shoots the helicopter, goes back in the water. Now I'm going to play that for you. And then you tell me, does this sound like something that is intentional, right? When we talk about aggression from whatever these things are. Let's take a look real quick. Oh, actually, it's this one here.
We got to kind of confront it regardless, but it's very real. It's insanely bigger than you think it is. It's not just a few things in the sky. It's very, very big. I got brought over to Italy. Some dudes with Italian intelligence in Vatican and UN, they were all there, went to military base, had these briefings, and they showed me a map of the Mediterranean. And what was happening is on the coast of Sicily, all these like apartments were like catching on fire. Like a microwave, boom, some books, boom, like the fucking couch, boom. And so the government came in and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? So they quarantine the area, get everyone to leave, and they're going, why are things catching on fire? They detected these energy beams, energy weapons or something that were coming off of like way out in the ocean in the Mediterranean. So this dude gets he was a colonel at the time, and he was in charge. Oh, what they looked out and saw were UFOs were out in the ocean fucking around. So the head of the UFO program and the head of the Italian Navy SEALs get on an unmarked civilian helicopter and just fly out to go see what's going on out there. As they're flying, a UFO pops out of the ocean and shoots their fucking helicopter down. I have the documents on the Italian intelligence letterhead. I talked to the two dudes I was in the meeting with that were on the fucking helicopter. I have pictures of the helicopter being chased by the UFO and all the damage that was done to it with some type of microwave weapon or something. And what they found out was that there were airplanes and other helicopters kind of in the area, but the UFO knew that those dudes were looking for him.
Very interesting, right? That sounds like unprovoked activity when it comes to dealing with these anomalous craft. And a lot of people are under the belief that there are different species, right, that are visiting. I don't know. I personally haven't had any interaction with any actual beings to tell you. But I've talked to enough people to know that there's at least 5 that people report. Some people say there's a lot more than that. Which ones are those? The ones that Tom DeLonge just talked about. When you have something that pops up out of the water like that. Why? Why would it shoot at the helicopter? Unprovoked. That's one thing that makes me feel like, that's why, and I said this a few months ago on the show, that it makes me feel like if the extraterrestrial presence was considered adversarial by governments around the world, right? Based on incidents like the one Tom DeLonge just talked about. There are other ones. Jeremy Corbell talks about us firing on some of these things recently. And he also talked about some of these things unaliving some military pilots. So, just the incident that Tom DeLonge talks about, right? Let's just talk about that. If any military was aware of that information, and likely all of the militaries around the world, I'm sure, heard about it, knew, and were briefed on that, or told about it, right? So that they know that this is potentially a threat. So, do governments around the world look at these things as adversarial? And is this one of the reasons why they don't really want to speak on it that much? Because the same way we have terrestrial adversaries like China, Russia, other North Korea, other places around the world, right? They don't really give the intel to the public on what it is that they know about the adversary, right? To have the leg up. Do they look at these extraterrestrial craft as adversary? They would never tell us, for one. But there are behaviors that have been presented that would make you have to think that if I were on a helicopter and a UFO popped out the water and shot my helicopter and I didn't do anything, right? I would think that that is a threat. So, with that being said, they've shown intentions of not being the kindest, right? And here's where I start to draw the issue, right? Because there's so many love and light people out there, and really we would hope that that's the case. But when we say, okay, show me incidents where they displayed love and light, how many can we come up with? I don't really know of any that we could just put a stamp on and say, yeah, they came through and they saved the day that time, or we just don't have any cases. The closest thing we have is, hey, they shut our nukes off because they want us to be peaceful. That's the main thing that they hang their hat. But we have incidents where we could point to where these things have fired on us or done things to where, the human being involved in the interaction did not come out alive. Because of that fact, and just that one right there, then when we look at Three Eye Atlas, then you have to understand why Avi Loeb would go into this saying, hey, let's at least leave the door open to have the discussion on what if this is, intelligent technology coming in the solar system. Because if it is, and it's related to the entities that Tom DeLonge is speaking about, then that could be trouble, right? The one UFO popped out the water, shot the helicopter. What if a technological item comes in, Three Eye Atlas or not, and it's related to whatever species that was that shot at the helicopter? I would be really concerned about that. And it takes me back again to Ross Coulthard recently, and he has a way with words, but he said something about us being on borrowed time. It concerns me when I hear something like that. We're on borrowed time. What does that mean? What does borrowed time mean? Lou Elizondo, somber, 2027, right? All these. I haven't heard anything out of all that makes me feel comforted with the extraterrestrial presence. And if there is something I'm missing, if someone can point to a time when, please do, because I would love to be totally, wrong about this. I would love to say, yeah, they stepped in many a times and saved the day, and be able to point to examples of times that they did that. But we don't have anything. All we can do is point to times when if they were here for good, that they could have stepped in, but they didn't. Right? So, moving on. That's a big one right there. And I don't know why people feel like Tom DeLonge shouldn't be believed, or that's the infighting of the community, and I think that's BS. I haven't seen anything where I would feel like Tom DeLonge went on that podcast to just tell a lie. Now, is someone lying to him? Maybe. I don't know. But I feel like he's telling that the story he just told is coming from a place of truth. Maybe there's a way that we find out more information on that. I don't know. But if that's believed to be true, that is definitely a time where you should probably be concerned. I'm sure they stayed away from that area, after that incident, right? Another one, DJ Khaled. Another one. We have Fred Valenti. I just found this. Now, I've always heard that there was the audio out there of the actual encounter. Well, I found the audio. So we're going to listen to the audio. And let me just give you a brief thing on Fred Valenti real quick here. For those who don't know, he disappeared. They never found him. Let me start by saying that. They don't know what happened to him after the audio that you're about to hear. So, Fred Valenti, an Australian pilot who disappeared while on a 125 nautical mile flight in a Cessna 182L light aircraft on the evening of Saturday, October 21st, 1978. 20-year-old, he was only 20, wow. 20-year-old Valentic informed Melbourne Air Traffic Control that he was being accompanied by an aircraft about 1,000 feet above him and that his engine had begun running roughly before finally reporting, quote, "It's not an aircraft." There were belated reports of a UFO sighting in Australia on the night of the disappearance. However, the Department of Transport was skeptical that a UFO was behind Valentic's disappearance, and some of their officials speculated Valentic became disorientated and saw his own lights reflected in the water or lights from a nearby island while flying upside down. Okay. Valentic radioed Melbourne Flight Service at 7:06 p.m. to report that an unidentified aircraft was following him at 4,500 feet. He was told that there was no known traffic at that level. Valentic said that he could see a large unknown aircraft which appeared to be illuminated by 4 bright landing lights. He was unable to confirm its type, but said that it had passed about 1,000 feet overhead and was moving at high speed. Valentic then reported that the aircraft was approaching him from the east and said that the other pilot might be purposely toying with him. Valentic said that the aircraft was, quote, orbiting above him and that it had a shiny metal surface and a green light on it. Valentic further reported that he was experiencing engine problems. Asked to identify the aircraft, Valentic radioed, quote, "It's not an aircraft." His transmission was then interrupted by unidentified noise described as, quote, "metallic scraping sounds" before all contact was lost. A sea and air search was undertaken that included ocean-going ship traffic, an RAAF Lockheed P-3 Orion aircraft, plus 8 civilian aircraft. The search encompassed over 1,000 square miles. Search efforts ceased on October 25th, 1978, without results. Here's the audio. Let's go ahead and play the audio real quick here. And here it is.
Delta Sierra Juliet, what type of aircraft is it? That was deleted from the press accounts for some reason. Delta Sierra Juliet, and confirm you cannot identify the aircraft. Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. Stand by. Can you describe the aircraft? Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. How large would the object be? Delta Sierra Juliet. Delta Sierra Juliet, confirm the aircraft just vanished. Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you? Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. What are your intentions?
My intentions are to go to King Island, Melbourne. The current aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne.
Yikes. And that was it. Never heard from, never seen again. No crash retrieval, nothing. And a lot of thoughts are the UFO was responsible for him not being seen again. Unprovoked. And I'll just say this because I feel strongly when we have reports of military pilots, our own military pilots here in the United States, talking about incidents where they had anomalous things moving around their craft and their electronics completely going out, the avionics on jets completely shutting down, them losing control essentially until the object goes away and they regain, the electronics and they get their avionics back. That's military pilots. We've had private pilots, obviously Valentech would be one, and then others who have talked about the same thing, flying their own personal planes, coming in contact with something anomalous, is shutting down the avionics on the plane. Now, that could be inadvertently or it could be purposely being done. We don't know. We could assume that there's some sort of electromagnetic field on these objects that interfere with the electronics, and this being the case. That could be. So if you have military pilots who have reported this, you have private pilots who have reported this. That's why I always say there's no way in the world that commercial pilots, meaning Delta, United, Spirit, whatever you fly, those planes have likely also experienced the same thing. And is that all, or if you want to look at it, are all those encounters intentional? Are they intentionally doing that? If we talk about they intentionally shut the nukes down, maybe it was inadvertent. Maybe something about their craft are shutting down the nukes. No, it's likely they intentionally shut the nukes down. So then, is it likely that they are shutting the electronics down on these aircraft? And if they are, that's hostile intent. That's enough to make any government around the world or any military look at the incident and say that's adversarial activity or conduct. So that's what I'm saying. Looking back on this, if we really look at it, and I wish Reed Summers was here with me because he talks the same thing as far as, how do we know they're not malevolent? How do we know the intent isn't malevolent? You got to think about it. You got to think about it. Another incident. The Colares, Brazil UFO encounter from 1977. So some of these images, if you see the center image of the young lady there, she had some sort of mark on her neck. I think she was grabbed by something that cut her on the neck. They tried to take her. These are some of the images that they had from then, some of the drawings from some of the people who experienced the activity. This went on for a period of time from 1976 into 1977, a long period of time where this activity was taking place. For those who don't know about Colares, Brazil, let me go ahead and give you a little bit on that. On July 23rd, let's see. No, this isn't Colares. This one is just historic. All right, so this is the Colares UFO flap refers to an outbreak of UFO sightings that occurred in 1977 on the Brazilian island of Colares. During the outbreak, the UFOs allegedly attacked the citizens with intense beams. So let me go back. The UFOs allegedly attacked the citizens with intense beams of radiation that left burn marks and puncture wounds. These sightings led to the Brazilian government dispatching a team to investigate under the code name Operation Saucer, but the government later recalled the team and classified the files until the late 1990s. This was the first operation of the Brazilian Air Force conducted only to investigate UFO-related issues. This operation was started shortly after the Colares UFO flap. And I'll just give you another one in 1979. I don't know if it's technically part of the flap, but still, same part of the world. On the evening of the 28th of July, 1979, security guard Antonio Carlos Ferreira was allegedly abducted from his workplace, a furniture factory in Mirassol, Sao Paulo. According to his own accounts, he was approached by three humanoid figures who tranquilized and took him aboard a small ship, which ferried him to a larger craft, 3i Atlas, further away. There, he said he was positioned in front of a large television-like device and presented with a variety of images before being forced to mate with the female alien, after which he was tranquilized again and returned to ground. Ferreira described the creatures as being approximately 4 feet tall, with pointed ears, slanted eyes, and human-like mouths. They lacked eyebrows or eyelashes and spoke in a language that superficially resembled Japanese. Some were said to have dark skin and red curly hair, while others had light skin and straight black hair. The ship was spherical, with 3 undercarriage-like legs protruding from the bottom, with the interior lit by bright red and green lights. Ferreira states that he encountered the aliens again in 1982, with the craft supposedly landing close enough for him to see the female alien and a childlike alien observing from the distance. He said he experienced a third encounter later in 1982, in which he was taken into a hangar of an alien craft via a green beam of light before being injected with a yellow substance. He said he was then taken to meet the 2 aliens once more, the younger of whom he was led to believe was his own child. Other encounters were said to have followed, a total of 16 or 20 between 1979 and 1980. So, another situation where they're using the word attack. Attack is a threat. Attack is adversarial. Attack means I'm not doing anything, and then you are bringing aggression to my direction. Right? Something to think about. For those who say there is no UFO threat narrative, for those who say they're here for love and light, there's nothing to be concerned about. There are cases that have happened here already historically that tell a different story. So whether 3i Atlas is the cavalry coming in or it's just a comet, we have beings already here in the skies and doing whatever they're doing that have been responsible for the things that we've just sat here and talked about tonight or so far. Right? And I know when people start hearing about the negative side, the potential negative side of what this could mean, the potential malevolence, a lot of people want to go into it's fear mongering. No, I don't think it is. It's just looking at what you have as the facts and then making educated, responsible, coming to conclusions that allow you to at least understand that there's the potential for the threat to be there. And I think that's at least all we really should be doing in this moment. And shout out again to Avi Loeb for doing that on the national stage, even though a lot of people, it's ridiculous. Three Eye Atlas is not alien, but how do you know? And if it is, you should probably know ahead of time. That way we can figure out what we're going to do here, right? If we figured out, so as time goes on, October comes, we get that closer image of what this is out there, Three Eye Atlas, and like, oh my God, it is something out of this world, then that means we would have a certain amount of time potentially to prepare for whatever was going to happen, right? But putting that aside, the ones that are already here have exhibited aggression towards human beings. So definitely something to be concerned about. And then also, obviously, remember this? This just happened. The pelicadas, the face pillars, Peru, just happened, right? That skeptics and a lot of people are blaming on illegal miners with jetpacks, with futuristic high-tech jetpacks, which just doesn't make sense at all. And these people in Peru are being attacked. Right? You saw the video. They were out there, taking shifts through the night, staying up all night while this whole thing was happening to stay on guard, right? Weapons. There's something there. There's something at least to consider or to have in the back of your mind, right? If the spaceship landed in front of you tomorrow with this knowledge, you shouldn't just be walking right up to it saying because you feel they're here for love, right? You should be like, wait a minute, Fred Valentic, wait a minute, that thing Tom DeLonge said, and then many other things. And we haven't covered them all here tonight, but we have at least something for you to chew on. You can do more research. There are definitely other cases out there where you would at least maybe have to think about it. And I think that's bare minimum the responsible thing to do in this moment. Right? What do you do? What would you do if it turned out that something like that, some sort of malevolent situation was on our doorstep and it was confirmed, like, yeah, for sure, like this is not going to be good? Then what does humanity do? Have we talked about it? I'm sure governments have definitely talked about it amongst themselves. Governments around the world understand what the threat is. They know about all these cases we talked about. Plus, there's a lot more that they know about that that they are keeping classified. Encounters where pilots may have disappeared that they will never tell, and they, sign it up as a casualty of war sort of situation, right? Where they don't tell you how it happened. They don't tell the family how it happened. There's definitely going to be cases of that. Definitely. So, not to be that guy, right? Not to be that guy. But I just feel like it's responsible to at least talk about it. At least have the conversation, because you just don't know. And I'll read this again, what I started the show out with. You would assume that most intelligent beings out there in the universe have experienced conflict at some point in their histories. This would mean that when traveling interstellar space, any intelligent being would understand the importance of having the ability to defend themselves. So, this would also mean that these beings must have weapons to defend themselves. They just period. There's no way they travel interstellar space and go travel light years with all these different intelligences out there and not have the ability to protect themselves if they ran into something like humans, right? Something that acts like us. So we know they have weapons on board. In order to defend, you need an aggressor. This goes on to say that with all the potential intelligent life out there, there must be aggressive species. The next logical question is, which one of those are visiting us? With this basic knowledge, shouldn't we prepare for the unknown? Answer is yes. The answer is yes. And that's kind of where we'll end it. These shows aren't too long. The definitive UFO news shows, we run for about an hour or so. Just want to get in, get out, right? Make the point, lay it out, check out some cases, see what you guys think about it, which we'll go into the chat here in a moment, read some of your messages. And I think I'll do that right about now. Let me see what everybody is saying out here. If you have any opinions on it, maybe you don't. I really think it's definitely something we should be consistently talking about. All right, let me just see. Okay, this is way back. Let me move further, closer to where we are. Oh, and I missed a few things. I see you out there, Monica. Thanks for coming in. Bim Jim as well. Wayne, I see you as well coming in. Let's see, who else is out here? Amy WC. Joe Monk. It's funny. Super Crazy Movie Geek says extraterrestrials are jerks. Yeah, they're jerks. And probably a lot more. The Jaquetta, thank you for coming on in. The Jaquetta also says, oh yeah, 1977 is also when Close Encounters came out as well, right? I believe so. It was 76, 77 right there. One of those two. Joe Monk, Star Wars, why the hell would we accept those assholes? Oh man, let me see. Yeah, Joe Monk. Didn't one of the fancy schmancy scientist dudes say that we have the ability to send ET home? That would be Ben Rich, Jim Goodall's good friend, our friend Jim Goodall, points to Ben Rich telling him back in the 90s, we have the tech to take ET home. And Ben Rich at the time was the president of Lockheed Skunk Works. And as I said, that statement could go, he did make that statement and he made it multiple times, different places, but that statement could go so many different, or a couple different ways, minimum, right? Which means what most people think it means on the face of it, which means they've built or reverse engineered the tech to take ET home. And we've had that since the 90s. Early 90s, 92, 93, somewhere in there, 93, 94. Well, that doesn't make sense because in 89, Bob Lazar is at S4, if we're to believe what he said. And he said They hadn't figured it out. When he left, they hadn't figured it out. And he felt that likely they bring this out every 10 years, try to crack the code. Uh, and if they put it away for a while, bring it back out, try to work on it again. And so Ben Rich's statement could potentially mean that they have retrieved the tech to take ET home, because we know with the Roswell crash in 47, they took the wreckage to Wright-Patterson, but then it was rumored to go from there to Lockheed Skunk Works, which again is where Ben Rich was the president of. So he could likely just be talking about the Roswell craft. Supposedly they have it. They would have had it in the early 90s as well when he made that statement. So it could simply mean we have retrieved the tech. We don't know how to use it. We don't know what to do with it. But if we could, it would take ET home. That could be essentially what Ben Rich meant when he said that. Or he could literally mean that they reverse engineered it. I doubt that that's the case. Because it just, like I said, in order to create something that isn't from here, from a different star system, you have to have the ability to process those materials, right? And we just don't have that here. And I just don't see that we've ever, I don't feel like we're there. Until they come out and show us something different, I just don't feel that way, right? So that's what Ben Rich said, and it could go a couple different ways. Like I said, if you believe Bob Lazar, and then you also believe Ben Rich's statement, the only way to make those two things work with each other is if Ben Rich is actually talking about crash retrieval, craft that have been retrieved, through some sort of crash retrieval mission, basically. It's the only way those two things can make sense together to where they're both accurate, right? So that's kind of where I lean with it. Maybe information will come out. Hopefully Bob Lazar talks more about this when the Project Ravator comes out once again. Maybe we get him to kind of talk about some of these things. He said maybe he'll end up going on a press tour when this happens. I hope he does, so he can elaborate on some of those things. Some of these questions, maybe we can ask him if Jim Goodall would be good enough to, set him up for an appearance on Space Star Radio. That'd be awesome. I agree, Joe Monk. We got stuff going on that nobody knows about. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. Let's see. All right. Let me make sure that. All right. Gray Owl. Shout out to Gray Owl. This is the quote, Jim Morrison. I don't know what's going to happen, man, but I'm going to get my kicks before the whole ish house goes up in flames. Jim Morrison. I love it. Joe Monk. For a while, I had a 1862 Parrott rifle in my yard, but the damn aliens would never stand in front of it. Let's see. Jerry Carter. I heard they were going to bypass us and go behind Mars. See what it is, and that's the thing. I think when a lot of people think about our solar system, you think about the planets in order: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and so on and so forth. And so it's like it's going to be close to us or close to Mars here in October, but it won't be to Jupiter until March of next year. It's just because you're not going to pass each planet in order as you get to the center of the solar system. They're going to be in different, locations. So I think that's what it is. So it's just going to end up when the trajectory is taking, when it does pass Mars, it's going to be on the other side of the sun, and we won't be able to see it from Earth. Jerry Carter, seems like they would have already sent scout ships to assess us. Yeah, they have. A lot of those things that we see in the sky now, and I include that because my sighting, I don't think there were living beings inside of the things I saw. I think they were like probes or drones, right? That were sent out from something else. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that we see out here is not manned objects, that they're actually probes sent out from some other likely larger ship. As wild as that sounds, as I'm even sitting here saying this, but it's very likely the case. Let's see. Joe Monk, what if the best weapons that the aliens have is a 2x4 with a big nail in it? That is hilarious. That is funny. Decipher, thank you for coming in. Shout out. Also, Warden Dragon, I see you out there. Thanks for coming in. Decipher, we need to work out what species are a threat, the tall grays, mantids, reptilians, etc. Right. I mean, we definitely. So, we just need to know if there's a threat there, period, and then figure out who's the threat afterwards. Just, is there a threat? Because the threat, if there's a threat, I'm blanking in threat over all the species. I'm gonna say they're all part of it until we know that they're not, right? So I don't know who's the threat, but there's definitely been a threat. We don't know who was in the UFO that popped out the water, shot the helicopter. We don't know what species that was, and I doubt that we ever would. Let's see. Joe Monk. I'm in the middle of reading a series of novels right now. The aliens show up to conquer Earth. Their scout ship showed up during the Middle Ages and gave them all the info on humans. Reconnaissance. It makes sense, man. That's why people think things are like, because these things are from somewhere else and that they are so far in advanced in intelligence that they don't think the way we think. I just don't. Why? Like, why is that the case? That's just a thought. I don't know. I think it's more likely with the other things we could point to that are uniform across the solar system, that pretty much all the billions of galaxies we see out there have star systems with the sun in the middle and have planets that orbit them, sometimes two suns, right? And have these round planets that orbit them. And it seems to be uniform across the solar system, right? So what else is uniform? Once again, as I said earlier, hot and cold, night and day, and likely good and evil. Right. Let's think. When you strip it down and you use the common sense that you were born with, a lot of this stuff I think we can talk through. I don't think you need to be a scientist to give an answer to that. I don't think you need to be an academic to, have these prerequisites to, your information being more valid than the next person. I don't think that's a thing. Let's see. Joe, who's this? Joe Monk. The aliens expected guys on horseback with pointy sticks. Yeah, they came about a couple hundred years ago. Let's see. All right, we're almost current here. By the time, let's see, Bim Jim. By the time 3i gets to Jupiter, we will have much more data. So it's about the data. Exactly. We're watching it every day. And that's what I said. 3i Atlas comes out to be a comic grade. It's going to be an awesome thing we'll get to see. But the thing is that if something is coming in, if intelligent life at some point decides to come in abundance this way, we're going to see something out there, likely, hopefully, we're going to have some sort of forewarning that this is taking place, hopefully. Jerry Carter, we got Space Force. Don't we have any starfighters yet? I think we do. I hope we do. Like I said, I hope some of the black budget money that is being spent on these projects, hopefully one of the projects is planetary defense. Hopefully. And hopefully some of that stuff is already up there. Hopefully it's just top secret and we haven't said anything about it. Yeah, Jerry Carter. Don't laugh. I bet they got all kinds of secret weapons we don't know about. I can agree. And so that's just the thing. At the end of the day, I don't want there to be an alien invasion. Obviously, it doesn't turn out well, especially if we're not equipped to handle it. I obviously don't want that. But it's something you got to think about. It's something that you got to think about. And the reason why is because we have extraterrestrial presence visiting the planet right now. Here, right now. So we're not talking about necessarily 3i Atlas being some sort of alien invasion. We're talking about the ones that are here. If they decide to flip the switch and turn this into something else, they're already here. So it's just something that you should think about. Like I said before, if tomorrow happens and we wake up in the morning and it's like Independence Day where there's ships parked over major cities all around the globe, you know what's going to happen? All these powers that be, these people who control the nuclear weapons and, keep us at war and keep the economic disparities going, those people are going in their bunkers. Those people are going in their bunkers, safe and sound for the most part, while they leave us out here to figure it out. So don't be complacent is all I'm saying. Just don't be complacent. You may never have to worry about this in your lifetime, but then you might. And like I said, I would rather find out that extraterrestrials are intentionally shutting off avionics on jets while I'm standing here on the ground. I don't want to be blasé and then find out at 35,000 feet that this is something that they do, right? I'd rather be right here on the ground, understanding that yes, they do interfere with avionics on commercial jets also, and that people who get on commercial jets should at least have that knowledge. So you can determine if you still want to go on a plane or not. Some people will still do it. But if I have the knowledge ahead of time that says at any time you could encounter something anomalous up there at 35,000 feet, it could shut your plane off. Yeah, it's probably a couple places I'm not going to fly. Probably a couple places I'm not going to fly. But with that being said, another awesome jam-packed, show where we kind of just dig deep and get into it because that's just what we do. And you have to do it. You have to do it because who else is going to do it, right? Where else are they having these conversations? These are the real conversations. These aren't what ifs. It'd be very responsible for you to walk away from tonight's show and say, have I ever thought what I would do if something happened like that? That's at least what should be in the back of your mind, because you may never have to deal with it, or you may be dealing with it tomorrow or next week, right? And so at least have thought through it at least once. So if you're confronted with the situation like that, you have some sort of game plan. That's all I'm saying, man. It's real. The phenomena is real. and we just need to know why they're here, what the intent is. And I don't know how soon we'll know that, but it's prepare for the best, prepare for the worst, right? With that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get ready to get out of here. It's been an awesome show. Once again, we do have other shows on this channel. We have right now, you're at the Definitive UFO News Show. We run these, maybe once, twice, 2, 3 times. It just depends how many times we run this show per week. But we also have other shows. We have the Social DIGG. Once again, as I said last show, I'm bringing this back. It's a lot of logistics to put on that show. It's my experience with the phenomenon, which is a show where we listen to experiencers like yourself. You come on stage on that show and you talk about your experience with the phenomenon. Once again, if you would like to come on and do that, send me an email, booksocialshow@gmail.com. Give me a brief synopsis of your experience, and then we'll set a show up so you can come on and talk about it. Also, late night call-in show. I may pop one of these up in the next day or two so we can get you guys on stage since I got everything working again, and we will go from there. Also, once again, memberships are available. I know there was some activity. I missed it in the chat as I was going through the presentation. Let me go back here. Mel WD40, appreciate you upgrading your membership. And once again, I personally have these memberships so that we're able to pay for subscriptions and things that we need to do, live streams, and to make the show better, essentially. So I appreciate any support that you guys give out there. Shout out to Mel WD40 for upgrading the membership. And once again, if you want to become a member, you can do so by clicking on the description link at the bottom of the video. There should be a link in there. Also, there is a link for our Discord, the social Discord, where it's an open chat line essentially for our viewers. You can go in there and talk 24 hours a day. If you go to, it should be in the link on the description as well. You can also find it in the community tab on this channel. If you are a new viewer here tonight, out there lurking, we'd appreciate if you consider hitting the subscribe button. And please, for everybody watching, just take a moment, hit the like button or the dislike button. Let us know how you feel about the show. Leave some comments, share the video to other friends, because there's more conversations to have. This is only the beginning. Until we figure out what's going on, we'll be having these conversations. So however long that takes is what we're going to do. And, once again, this is a moment for humanity to sit down, have these real conversations, and figure out what we're going to do next. Because there will be the moment when contact has happened. When will that be? I don't know. Will it be in our lifetime? I don't know. But we need to prepare ourselves as human beings for the moment. And then what happens next, right? Very important, very important. We will be talking about those things here. So once again, we'd love to see you guys subscribing if you're not subscribed. Also, we will be covering the congressional hearing on Spaced Out Radio Tuesday, September 9th, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. We'll be live streaming that on Spaced Out Radio and also here as well. So you go to either channel, doesn't matter where you watch it from, but we will be live streaming that, and we won't really be doing commentary. We'll probably do the live stream, maybe say a couple things, and then do a separate show where we kind of break down the hearing and whatever was said there. So with that being said, once again, appreciate you, Mel WD40, for supporting the show, showing love out here. And let me see, what else do we have? I think that's it. We got the social shop, the Cash App, $, Mr. Rob G. Once again, any support goes to helping produce the show. You don't have to send anything, but we appreciate anything that you do. Is definitely appreciated. Also, again, everyone has a cell phone out there. I'm pretty sure Take down the number, program it into your contact list. 856-843-3444, or that's 856 the dig. This is the number we use for the call-in show. And generally for you to just call in and say hi, leave a message about your experience. We'd appreciate you doing any of that. Also, if you're outside the United States, all you need to do is dial 001 first, then the number 856-843-3444 or 001-856 the dig. With that being said, guys, another fantastic show. Make sure you share this on your social medias. Let's get the conversation out there. I think we're at like 649 subs right now. We probably should be way higher. Share with your friends. Tell them to come on and join the conversation with us over here at the Social Dig. With that being said, guys, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to get you out of here real quick. Have a great rest of your night. You guys all. Actually, before I get out of here, I definitely want to still say, show the appreciation to our executive producers here, which are basically our members. So Maggie M10, Leanne Bridges, D. Nunley, The Beekeeper, Polly Riderman, Miss Catherine Jones, Deb from Sacramento, Wes Decker, W. Decker, and Joanne, Emperor Penguin, Frankie B, Amy, Laura Dominguez, Moody Mungle, Mel WD40, President Zaddy, Lulu Bell, Richard Minnick, Archon Jackpot, Matt Hector, Eternity Eternal, Thirsty, Deb D, Twiggy, Poncho Zork, and T-Bone. Thank you so much for your awesome support of the show. My name is Mr. Rob G. This is the Definitive UFO News Show. You guys have a great rest of your night. I'll be seeing you sooner than you think. Let's keep fighting for this. Take care. Welcome to the Social Shop, courtesy of the Social Dig. I am Mr. Rob G, and we are bringing you exclusive gear, and tonight's no different. We have Humanity t-shirts, the positive progression of humanity. Yes, you can go out into the world and proudly show everyone what humanity means to you. $32.99. And remember, if you're a social soldier, you get an additional 20% off the price. That's right. Being a social soldier gets you an additional 20% off. And keep in mind, depending where you are in the world, shipping fees and taxes will be applied. Bringing you exclusive gear right here at the Social Shop on the Social Dig.